Fortune's Progeny, The Ascent, Episode 20, The First Morning. The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. For a solid year, this exact hour meant grinding through side hustles, checking his budget tracker, or just staring at the ceiling in a cold sweat. Today, it felt completely different. Trent sat up in his small room, the reality of yesterday finally sinking in. The gray wool suit from his presentation hung neatly on the closet door. He was now a special executive officer of Aethelgard Holdings. The title still felt heavy and unfamiliar, like a brand new pair of boots he hadn't broken in yet. He made coffee in the quiet kitchen while his housemates were still asleep. Instead of opening his personal spreadsheet, he pulled up a new encrypted corporate portal on his laptop. Logging in with his new email, tashford.seo@aethelgard.com, unlocked an entire universe of data. Real-time profit and loss statements, strategy memos, live trackers for Sustain. The practice rounds were officially over. He was in the game. At 7:45 a.m., an unmarked town car picked him up. He thought he was heading to the main glass tower, but they drove to a smaller, classic brick building nearby, the Aethelgard Stewardship Wing. This was where the company managed its quieter, long-term investments. His new office was on the third floor, looking out over a small park. A simple nameplate on the desk read, Trent Ashford, Special Executive Officer, Legacy and Sustainable Operations. Right next to it sat a thick folder labeled Week 1, Immersion. Silas was already standing by the window. He turned around as Trent walked in.
Think of that title as a compass, Trent. Your job is to prove that legacy and sustainability are the actual engine for long-term growth. Your first meeting is in 15 minutes. You'll meet your assistant, Clara, and then you have back-to-back calls with the directors of Greenwise, the Atelier, the Highlands, and Sustain. Your job today is to listen. Find out the gap between the proposal you wrote and the reality they live.
It was the foundation step approach to leadership that Trent had used to fix his finances. Step 1, build an emergency fund of actual information. Don't make big moves until you have a buffer of real-world facts. Clara, a woman in her 50s with a calm, no-nonsense demeanor, arrived precisely on time. Within minutes, she had synced his calendar, outlined communication protocols, and handed him dossiers on the 4 managing directors.
Mr. Alden up at the Highlands hates video calls, so just phone him. The Sustain manager, Priya, already has her weekly numbers ready. Just listen first. They're all just itching for a headquarters genius to tell them how to do their jobs.
Trent nodded. The first lesson of the day already learned. Stewardship respected individual rhythms. The video calls were an absolute flood of information. The Greenwise director was incredibly passionate, but completely overwhelmed, begging for a budget to hire a part-time helper to handle community coordination. Over at the Atelier, a master craftsman named Henrik spoke in a soft Scandinavian accent about the pressure they felt to make every single piece flawless.
We are artists, Trent, not a committee. The freedom is wonderful, but the pressure to be perfect is heavy.
Priya from Sustain was incredibly sharp, but visibly cautious.
The waste programs are working, and margins are stabilizing, but the team is still shaken up from the old aggressive management style. They don't need another sudden pivot. They just need a steady hand.
Finally, Trent called Mr. Alden at the Highlands. The old caretaker's voice was crackly but clear over the line.
So you're the new boss. I read your sanctuary plan in the board notes. My question is simple. When these high-powered executives show up here for their strategic silence retreats, are they going to expect chocolates on their pillows, or are they actually coming here to shut up and think?
It was a perfectly blunt question. Trent couldn't help but smile.
They're coming to be quiet, Mr. Alden. And if anyone asks for a mint on their pillow, you have my full permission to point them toward the mint garden.
Fair enough. We'll be ready for them.
By 5 p.m., Trent's head was spinning with names, numbers, and complaints. The beautiful, clean theories in his business plan were hitting the messy reality of real people and tight budgets. He opened a fresh notebook and labeled the first page, Operational Listening. He wrote down a single thought about the space between planning a strategy and actually running it.
The space between a plan and reality is usually filled with human anxiety. My first job isn't to change how they work, it's to prove that the plan protects them. That's the real foundation.
The next morning brought his first real test. An email from Priya at Sustain landed with a red exclamation point. Vendor ultimatum. The family-owned mill that supplied their organic bulk grains and served as the centerpiece of Sustain's ethical branding was threatening to walk away. Aethelgard's central corporate procurement team was forcing all branches to use a single corporate supplier to get a massive volume discount. The small mill couldn't compete with those corporate rules. For the corporate accountants, it was basic math. Buying from the small mill hurt margins. But for Sustain, losing that mill meant killing their reputation for authenticity. It was a direct hit to the exact values Trent had just defended in front of the board. The safe corporate move was to step aside and let procurement handle it. The harder, right move was to fight. He called Clara immediately.
I need two things. Get me a cost breakdown comparing the small mill to the industrial supplier, including how losing the mill might affect customer loyalty. And get me a slot on the cross-department leadership call this afternoon.
He spent the next 4 hours building a business case. He didn't frame it around feelings. He framed it around the financial value of trust. He calculated how many customers they would lose if they dropped the mill and how much damage it would do to the Aethelgard brand. Then he put together a compromise. Keep the local mill as an exclusive supplier for Sustain's core lines and let procurement standardize the rest of the generic inventory. Sustain would simply cover the cost difference as a marketing expense on their own books. During the afternoon meeting, when procurement finished pitching their cost-cutting plan, Trent unmuted his microphone. His voice was calm but steady.
I'm all for efficiency, but not all costs are the same. Some expenses are actually investments in the trust that keeps our customers coming back. For Sustain, this mill isn't just a vendor, it's the backbone of the brand. Cutting it to save 2% on margin is like selling off a patent just to pay a month's rent. Let's run this as a pilot program for strategic legacy partnerships with its own financial rules.
The pushback was instant. People argued about corporate policy and setting dangerous precedents. Trent didn't flinch, pointing directly back to his mandate and the customer loss projections. Finally, the company's CEO, a sharp woman named Larson who hadn't said a word all morning, leaned forward.
The Progeny protocol was supposed to test principled management. It looks like the first real-world test is sitting right here. I'm willing to give this pilot a shot. Let's track Trent's customer retention numbers over the next 3 months and see if the story actually drives sales. Approved.
It was a small, temporary win, but as the call ended, Trent felt the adrenaline fade. He had just made his first executive decision, using up some of the political credit he'd earned during his trial year. He'd stood his ground, using numbers and nerve. It was the exact same snowball strategy he'd used on his debt. Win a small, specific battle to build momentum for the bigger climb ahead. The system was finally working in the real world. That evening, he sat at the wooden table in Maya's apartment, feeling the exhaustion completely take over. After speaking with Maya, getting reassured in his beliefs, Trent smiled, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. The foundation was still being poured, but the structure was finally starting to show.